Welcome in. Sooner Softball Live is here. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jason Ray. Welcome in. This is our second show that we've done. Last week, well, maybe a little bit over a week ago, we did actually, I think it's a couple weeks ago now, we did our first live show previewing the Oklahoma Texas series, and now we thought this would be a good opportunity here ahead of tonight's game between Oklahoma and LSU to do another Sooner Softball Live. So make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell so that you know that we're going live each and every week that we go live. So we'll continue to do this throughout the softball season here, through the end of the year, culminating hopefully from an Oklahoma perspective with a three-peat and another Women's College World Series victory for Oklahoma. But between now and then, we'll continue to go live pretty much on a weekly basis. We'll kind of depending on what the schedule looks like and things like that, we'll continue to do that. So from a housekeeping perspective, just remember that we'll continue to give the same great Oklahoma football coverage that you've become accustomed to over the last few years. Still will go live, schedules pending each and every week. 11:30 a.m. Central, and we'll continue our series as we're talking about previewing positions, and we're moving over to the defensive side of the ball tomorrow. So make sure you catch us again at 11:30 tomorrow. But today, and then and as we talked about, we'll continue to kind of talk through some of the softball stuff here, primarily focusing on Oklahoma Sooner softball, but obviously talking about Big 12 and the national scene as well. So, like I said, if you don't know me, my name is Jason Ray. Come follow me on Twitter at JasonRay1. Have a lot of good coverage, whether it be Oklahoma or nationally. We've got you covered. We have a group of so-called experts, a group of guys and gals that have either played, big fans, have a lot of knowledge within the sport, whether it be Oklahoma or nationally, that we go live. We provide a top 16 ranking each and every week. We provide some kind of as a group some statistics related to supporting those top 16 rankings, and even this week we went a little bit further when we looked at some other teams that were just outside of that top 16 that we think about that could possibly make their way up into getting to a position where they're able to host a regional or even potentially a super regional, depending on how the rest of the season goes. And then as you know, we typically do a live space on Twitter, so make sure you check that out. Typically it's on Tuesday nights, but we had to shift some things around, much the same way as we do here from time to time. Schedules are change a little bit, but we'll have our Twitter space on Thursday, so make sure you catch that. Jackie does a wonderful job at hosting us every single week as we talk about some of the hot topics within the game of college softball, whether it be the rankings or whether it be any specific matchups or anything that might be going on within the world of softball, both with Oklahoma, but it's more of a national scale, and then we'll certainly look at that nationally there, then a little bit more Oklahoma focused today. So we will take you up until at least pretty close, maybe a couple of minutes early, let you guys get out of here, and then we will up until the first pitch tonight from Baton Rouge. So we'll do a little preview, take some of your comments and questions, any predictions that you have for tonight, and then I'll get to my predictions a little bit later, towards the end of the show. But make sure you kind of share this and make sure, because we want to get a lot. There's a lot of more just the love of the game and just a lot more excitement about the game of softball, the college softball game. And then just get as many people on here as we can, and certainly be more consistent in the coverage and what we do here. So just a little bit of a recap for Oklahoma. 36-1 now. I had another 3-game sweep over Texas Tech over the weekend. Scores are a little bit lower than I think some people may have been accustomed to or expect, but I'll get to that in a little bit. Oklahoma shut out Texas Tech in 3 consecutive games, and I don't care who you're playing. That's extremely difficult to do. So kudos to the pitching staff. All three ladies got a shutout, complete game for Alex Storako in game 1, and then a little bit of a combined effort in Game 2 and Game 3 with Nicole May getting the start in Game 3 and then and giving way to Kirsten Deal a little bit, and then Jordy pitching Game 2, and again with Deal getting some valuable time. You never know when you're going to be in a situation where you're going to need a number four starter, and I think as the season progresses, we'll see how that goes. But I think there's the teams that have a true staff will continue to be. I think will continue to be a little bit more successful than some of the teams that rely, on one arm. I'm thinking of maybe Alabama with Montana Fouts, maybe Virginia Tech with Emma Limley. You think about UCLA to a certain degree with Megan Farimo, but I think the staff that Oklahoma has, and so I think. When you look at that, just a great, like I said, a great pitching, exhibition, I guess, so to speak, with Texas Tech, who was second in the nation in home runs coming into the series, and obviously with the shutout, and Oklahoma was able to surpass them in that fashion. But I think it's one thing that Patty touched on that I wanted to touch on is just kind of a recap from that series in her press conference was somewhat to the degree of, and it was very intriguing, kind of some of her comments, really almost kind of talking through unrealistic expectations that sometimes we as fans and maybe even the media has for this team. There's so many over the last couple of years, so many dominant performances, so many run rule victories, and so much that we've just really not seen in the game of softball. Just from a dominant perspective, I think there's a lot of, if Oklahoma doesn't hit 3 or 4 home runs and run rule these teams, I think there's a little bit of an eye roll, or there's a little bit of an eyebrow raise in terms of what's wrong, what's going on, why do we only score 3 runs? Why do we only score 6 or 7 or whatever it is? And so I think it's very important to note that uh, this is a very difficult game. Very, very difficult game. It's one that it's very comparable to baseball from the aspect of when that ball is moving and it's coming at you so quickly, and you're so close to the circle. It's a very difficult game. So I think the unrealistic expectations are certainly there, and I think it's something that probably some of these kids enjoy the expectations and being elite, and almost being to a certain degree being perfect. But I think we have to temper that as fans, and I thought it was very, very interesting that that Patty had talked about that a little bit in her post game on Sunday, as Oklahoma won that game 7-0. So again, like really, really impressive, particularly from a pitching perspective, just in terms of being able to shut that team down. A team that came in with a pretty good resume. Certainly, I think some of those wins that they got early in the season were bolstered by maybe not the best schedule in the world, but still. Having said that, I still think that there is that team is really good, able to hit the ball well, and I think we'll continue to see as the season kind of winds down here from conference play, just to see what that will continue to look like for them. So let me. There's a couple of comments here, and then we'll go. Here and kind of talk a little bit more about the game. Hey, Fing, thanks for joining. Lee, good to have you here. Thanks for joining as well. Yes, the pitching staff was on point last week, and absolutely agree. Yeah, and Joey's our resident West Virginia fan that comes in here most predominantly for our football shows. But thanks for jumping in, Joey. And yeah, absolutely. Make sure that you. Make sure that you invite friends and share this, and on social media, just so that we can get that popularity. I've absolutely agreed, Joey, without a doubt. So let's look at this game tonight a little bit and talk about really in the same way. We'll kind of talk about the pitching matchups and what that looks like from a on the other side from an offensive perspective, from a hitting perspective. And so again, Oklahoma is really taking this opportunity over the last couple of years to really challenge themselves out of conference play with some of the powers in the SEC. A few years ago, Oklahoma went to Georgia. They ended up playing a double. I believe they played a doubleheader against Georgia. There, they lost one. I believe that was the first loss of the season a few years ago. And then last year they went and played Kentucky, and that was a really dominant performance from Oklahoma last year in a run rule, I believe, and then certainly had done the same thing against against Kentucky this year. So again, this is something that I think Patty likes to do. And again, I think the other intriguing thing that she mentioned in her post game was like she wants the opportunity for these kids to really challenge themselves. And I think she was talking from both sides to a certain degree, but certainly understand her context and loves the support, the outpouring of support, and everything that Sooner Nation has given to this softball program, over the years, and it's a hot ticket anywhere you go. I know that our one of our experts and one of our crew that covers Oklahoma and the national scene as well, Jessica Boehm, had talked about a little bit about trying to get tickets to this Miami, Ohio tournament that Oklahoma is going to be playing in this weekend, and the tickets were sold out like instantly. And so when you go into these, it's hard, right? When you go into these unfriendly territories and you're getting a lot of Sooner fans there, she loves that. That's great. That's great for the program. That's great for the brand. That's great for everything. But at the same time, I think where she would like to see is Oklahoma get into a situation with a little bit of a hostile territory and a little bit of a situation where everything's against them, and just see how they react. I think as a coach, you naturally want to see what your team's made of when your back's against the wall, facing a little bit of adversity, and I don't think that this team's had a ton of adversity. They've had some, obviously, with the loss to Baylor, and then they've I believe 28 straight that Oklahoma's won since that loss to Baylor early on in the season, and then there was certainly some adversity against Florida State. A couple other games where Northwestern comes to mind, where they've not necessarily been at their best, but they've been able to win games when they've certainly not been at their best. And obviously Texas, a couple of weeks ago, when they were down 3-1 in the seventh inning, and just showed what they were made of. But I think Patty wants to see more and more of those things, and certainly it's one thing being at home facing adversity, and it's a little bit of a different thing when you go on the road for Oklahoma. And so I think part of her is, and me as well, wanted to see. Obviously, you love to see Sooner Nation show up when wherever they're going, but I think at the same time would like to see that kind of everybody against you type of situation, and see how the team goes. So kind of let's break down Oklahoma's pitching staff here a little bit. So and I don't know that I'm going to give a prediction in terms of who's going to get the ball. I had to, when we went into this game one against Texas, I had a guess, and it was wrong. But not sure what the weather situation is in Baton Rouge today. But as we mentioned, all three of these ladies pitched a shutout this weekend. Alex Storako still outside of that little blemish that she had against Florida State has been rock solid all year. 0.73 ERA in the circle. Nicole May, I'll spend a little bit of time talking about Nicole. 11-0, 0.43 ERA, still just doing a phenomenal job in the circle. And every time she's out there, you just can't help but notice the confidence that she's exuding in herself and in her teammates and her ability to pitch and pitch in big games. And I know there's been a little bit of a stigma around her just in terms of some women college World Series appearances that haven't necessarily been the best. And unfortunately for her, a couple of those have been against UCLA. But I think I'm just me personally, and I take the media hat off to a certain degree and just really kind of talk about it from a fan only perspective. I'm just really excited to see her moment this year as she continues to move as Oklahoma moves into the postseason. I think she's going to be someone that is going to be really, really solid. And as Patty mentioned, she has more confidence in Nicole right now than she's ever had. So I think that's very important as you look at Oklahoma having three aces. And then we talk about Jordy, 11-1, 1.42 ERA, 92 strikeouts and 74 innings pitch. And I put this little statistic up there because she has been just absolutely on fire, rock solid. I think she had a little bit of a tough outing in Starkville at Mississippi State, but then since then, 1 run in 31 innings pitched. And I think one of the big problems that she had earlier on in the year is number one, teams. There's a lot more technology these days. There's a lot more film studying. So I think, teams are able to figure pitchers out to a certain degree. And so I think she's kind of she's not, this isn't really a word, but she's kind of refound herself to a certain degree with that. But I think the biggest thing is she'd struggled with walks early on in the year, and as you see here, she's only had 7 walks in the last 31 innings with those 41 strikeouts, and so she's lowered her ERA to somewhere it was around a 2.25 all the way down to a 1.42 in the matter of just about a month. So. If I had to guess, and of course I say this, and I know I'm going to be wrong, but if I had to guess, I think we probably see Jordy on the mound tonight or in the circle tonight. But again, we'll see how that goes. And then let's as we move over to the LSU side of the fence from a pitching staff perspective, and then we'll go to any comments that you guys have, and we'll talk through those. So I would anticipate again. I don't know if Andrew's on here, but we talked about that a little bit today. Just in terms of, I think a lot of people will try to use this committee approach if they're able to. Some teams may not necessarily be able to. Some teams won't like that. But I think to a certain degree, I think we will see that in some capacity, certainly tonight, but as we go forward in some of these series. And I would be surprised if we don't see a committee approach. So Sydney Berzon is really kind of turned into a little bit of the ace of the staff. She is a freshman, so not sure if Beth Torina is going to be interested in putting her, at least from a starting perspective, right there in the circle in a game, in a matchup like this. But again, 11-2, 1.71 ERA, 84 strikeouts, and 86 innings pitched. She had a little bit of an up and down weekend this weekend against Missouri. She got touched up for a few runs early on in that, or I guess middle of the game, in Game 1 against Missouri, and then in Game 3 came back and really kind of shut them down a lot in that game. Like I said, solid freshman in the circle. And then the lady that's been there ace for most of the season is Allie Kilponen, 2.05 ERA, 82 strikeouts, and 92 innings pitched. As you see, it's pretty even. 86 inning pitches for Berzon, and then 92 for Kilponen. So I think that'll be. I think those are the two big arms that we'll see whether or not it's Kilponen starting or Berzon starting. We'll see. I do believe it'll be one of the two, and then I think if you get into a situation where it does indeed look like a committee, Raylene Chafin, 2.86. She's got the least amount of innings pitched of the three, but certainly think that she will be one of those that's part of that rotation as well if LSU goes to a committee. Now, there's not a whole lot of arms in the circle that have pitched a lot of innings outside of that. So I think if it's outside of that, it's probably one of those situations where it's gotten away from LSU, or I guess could have gotten away from Oklahoma to a certain degree. But obviously, the more realistic option would have been that that the game had gotten away from LSU to a certain degree, and they're just trying to get through the rest of the game. So we'll go to some of your questions and comments that we might have. So bring any questions or comments that you have, and then we'll move over to kind of the hitting side of things. So, thing Tennessee up 2-0 early on Virginia Tech. We're going to talk about that a little bit later when we kind of talk about some of the matchups today, which is just a fantastic day for softball. This game should be a good preparation for the OSU series. Yeah, I think so. I think so. Without a doubt. I think that's a good point as well. I'm interested to see. OSU is one of those teams where they're really good. They are a very good team. They're absolutely a top 4 or 5 team. No matter how you shake it. I wonder when it comes. When they face some of the really good teams. Outside of Maxwell, Kilfoyle got beat up a little bit against Kansas over the weekend. And then Aycock was the starter against Wichita State. She got touched up a little bit, so it'll be interesting to see with them, how that goes. But no, I agree with you, Ving. I think that will be interesting to end the season for Oklahoma. Nice and cool, but not cold. Humidity will not be a factor. I think so. So a good day. Wow, 4-0 Tennessee after 1. Wow, that's it's good for Tennessee. I think Tennessee's a team that's been struggling a little bit. We've got some. We'll talk about that a little bit, but we'll move back to Oklahoma, then we'll go. And then we'll talk more nationally here in just a few minutes. Okay. Oh, and then so when you look at, I don't have anything from a statistical perspective to put up here, but Oklahoma, I think it's one of those things where you look up and down the lineup, and this team has continued to hit extremely well, hit 380 as a team, 69 home runs on the year. And one of the things, and we touched on this last time, but I think it's one of those things where Oklahoma continues to have different people step up, whether it's Jada Coleman, whether it's Haley Lee this weekend. Both of those ladies really did a great job, a couple of home runs apiece in those efforts. Whether it's Tiare, there's whether it's Kinsey, whether it's Brito, there's different people that always seem to step up and different. So it's really very difficult to go, to go up and down this lineup. But I think the one thing that's going to be interesting for me is, and as we go through, go through the season here, if Patty starts relying on who she starts relying on more times than not on from a first base perspective. I know that we've talked about Sydney Sanders a lot, still struggling, hitting about 220. I think a lot of us were hoping that when she got that game-winning hit against Texas, in Game 3 for the walk-off, that would kind of spearhead some things. And she really just she didn't. I don't remember her getting a hit at all. Hit a couple of balls hard. Don't remember her getting a hit in the series against Texas Tech. And then you got Jocelyn Erickson, who has who started just extremely hot, cooled down a little bit. She's starting to get some better swings in there. And then I don't know. We'll see if there ever comes the time where we see Sophia Nugent at first base. But I think it'll be interesting to see how Patty plays that, as really. I mean, I know it's hard to say this, but maybe a little bit of a weaker spot. I wouldn't say a weak spot, but a weaker spot in the lineup at first base there. So we'll see how that continues to go. But yeah, up and down the lineup 1 through 8. Oklahoma has, has girls that are gonna different ones are gonna step up, and I think it's one of those situations where you're not going to be able to hold this whole team down for 7 innings. I think Northwestern was about the only team that really was able to do it with a lot of success, and so, but we'll see what that looks like going forward. And then when you look at LSU at the play, they're around. I don't have the stats right in front of me. I think they hit around 325 as a team. They have four ladies that hit over 330. Denisha Coffey is the leadoff hitter, not a power hitter, more of a slapper, getting on base. 442. Taylor Pleasance, the shortstop, hits 360. Sierra Briggs 357. Raylene Gutierrez, I believe she's the second baseman. Or maybe she's the third base. I think she's an infield. Anyways, hitting 330, and so not a whole lot of power as we'll see here. Taylor Pleasance has 8 home runs, and now she has an abdominal issue that she's been struggling with. So, if you watched any of their games this weekend over Missouri, she can't even take a full swing. She's still hitting fairly well, believe it or not, but she's got a little bit of I don't know if it's a tear or just soreness, but she wasn't taking full swings. So she's one that I don't know that I would have a lot of confidence on that would be able to leave the yard. But then you've got Georgia Clark, who had just an outstanding weekend, leads LSU with 9. But as a team, they're not a big home run hitting team that you have here. 30 Oklahoma's more than doubled them from a home run hitting perspective. So, yeah, they'll rely on base hits and making the other team miss without a doubt, or making the other team earn it, I should say. So if Fang Sanders need to find lucky rabbit foot or something to learn to luck around, yeah, I think that'll be interesting. That's interesting to see how that platoon and what it's been will work. I think Alina Torres has had a little bit of struggles early on, but she's hitting the ball well. I think she's somewhere in the 340 to 350 neighborhood herself personally. So she's hit well. But I mean, I think Sanders is probably it's probably the option that they'll go with, but we'll see how that continues to go. It's very fascinating to me to see how Patty will do that. Lee, who's our starting pitcher again, I don't know. I don't think they've announced it just as of yet. And I don't have any inside information. My guess would be Jordy. Just she's kind of solidified herself, I think, at least in most people's mind as the ace. They talked a little bit about that on the broadcast this past against Texas in terms of she's come in and she came in every game, and so I think she's probably the one that I would anticipate, but would not even remotely be surprised if it's Nicole May or Alex Torraco. Either one of those three. Oklahoma has 3. A trio of aces, without a doubt. Yes, I've heard the same thing. It is, I believe, it is very much a pitcher's park. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that goes as well. But would not expect to be surprised by anyone who comes out there. So let's look a little bit nationally. I don't have the games on right now, but was going to look a little bit nationally at some of these games, and some of them have, as Fang has mentioned. Let me get my scoreboard up right here, and so some of those mentioned that Tennessee was up, I believe 4-0. I don't know if that's changed at all in some of these games. So let's look here. Sorry, excuse my delay. Yeah, 4-0 Tennessee over Virginia Tech. So let's go down the line here. Clemson, South Carolina looks like South Carolina's taking a 2-0 lead early on in that game in the top of the second. Clemson's a team that's reeling. They are a team that was self-promoting themselves as potentially from their from their barstool account as potentially being the number one team in the nation, and really were just struggled all weekend against Florida State, and just a damaging sweep. They had Clemson was a team that was, even with the record, was going to need a little bit of help just because of the fact that they have a very weak schedule so far. And so losing those three games, being swept at home, was really unfortunate if you're a Clemson fan. And I think LSU, FSU kind of showed their dominance, their ACC dominance to a certain degree there. Um, so yeah, it was a series that Clemson really specifically they needed to get one, but not getting any. They've got all four of their losses are to top 25 teams. I don't believe they've got a win against the top 25 team. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. They have the loss to Clemson, and then certainly the sweep there against Florida State. So, and I think the big thing for Clemson is they desperately. I mean, it's hard to say that in the regular season, in the softball regular season, that one game is almost a must win. But I think this one is for Clemson. You know, if they were to lose this game today to South Carolina, then because I think the big thing is for Clemson is they only have three games remaining against a top 25 team, and who knows if they'll be top 25 by that time. It's the last series of the year when they go to Blacksburg and face Virginia Tech. And so, I think if you're a Clemson fan, you've got to be a little bit worried. Not necessarily that they can't make some noise and get to the Women's College World Series, because I think they can, but right now, especially if they lose this game, they're going to have a hard time being a super regional host if they're able to get there, just because of their schedule, and I think their strength of schedule right now is 65, and it is, I don't know if it's by far, but it's clearly the worst amongst the top 16 and then the top 25 overall. So they're going to need some help. But then South Carolina is a pretty decent team. They've had their ups and downs this year. They're at 27-11, but they've got some. I mean, they've got some good wins on the resume. They've got wins against Alabama. They've got a win against Alabama, I should say, a win against LSU, and they've got two wins against Florida. So I think that's helping them. They're at an RPI of about 33, so they're pretty safely, in the tournament at this point in the field of 64. But they're going to continue to look for some of these wins, not only in the SEC, but this win to bolster their resume to a certain degree, and looks still 2-0 from what it looks here against Clemson here. So. Yeah, I agree. I agree, Fane. Clemson won't host Supers. They will really need. They'll need this win, and I think they probably need to go undefeated the rest of the way until they hit. Until they hit the conference tournament. But in that conference tournament, I think they would need to sweep Virginia Tech, win out the rest of their games, and I think they would need a couple wins against ranked opponents. I think they would need like a win against Duke, a win against Florida State, or Virginia Tech, or some. But I don't know that would do a whole lot of good. But I think Duke and or Florida State would probably be what they absolutely need to get a top 4 seed. And then we go to, as we talked about a little bit already, Tennessee, Virginia Tech. Tennessee's a team that's struggled as of late. They were really, really hot. Was in my mind really clearly the best team in the SEC. But they're only 2-3 their last 5 games, including loss to Texas A&M, lost back-to-back games to Baylor last weekend. One game they got shut out in, and I think really what's the struggle for them is on the offensive side of the ball. Only scored 28 runs in the last 6 games combined for between four and a half run, about 4.5 runs per game, and so whereas they average right around 7 for the season, and so I think that's one thing, and I think this is another big game for them. Probably a little bit bigger than it is for Virginia Tech, in different ways, right? I think Tennessee's still going to be a team that's going to fight for a top 8 overall seed, but they got a tough conference slate ahead of them here. So they go to their next 3 series is against Kentucky, Florida, and Arkansas. With Kentucky and Arkansas being away from Knoxville. So this is one that they need to get. Virginia Tech is one of those teams that's been a little bit interesting throughout the season. I'm not the biggest uh, fan of Virginia Tech. I don't know that they're good enough to really even get a top 16 team host. I think they're a little bizarre in the fact that they lead the country in home runs still. I think they're at like 74, 75. Excuse me, somewhere around there. But they are they just barely have over a 300 batting average as a team. So it's a lot of big swings, a lot of misses. And from a pitching staff perspective, they have a team ERA that's near 3, 2.94. Emma Limley is their ace. She's better than that overall, slightly above 2, but they're just I don't think their pitching staff is going to be able to hold up, even though they hit a lot of home runs. They could give somebody trouble, but it'll be interesting to watch them go forward. But yeah, I don't I don't know that they'll be able to do that. And as I speak here, Tennessee's is up 7-0 now. So not only are they in danger of losing this, maybe a run rule is potential for them tonight. Really, uh, really a good opportunity for Virginia Tech here, but it looks like that they're not going to be able to get that. So then we talk about Arkansas, Central Arkansas. This one's a little bit under the radar, but certainly a good game if you're a follower of the SEC, if you're a follower of the of national softball as a whole. Central Arkansas beat Arkansas earlier this year. Central Arkansas is one of the better mid-major teams in the country. They have an RPI of somewhere in the top 20. So they've played a fairly decent schedule. I believe 27-9 is their record at this point. Like I said, beat Arkansas earlier in the year at Arkansas. Played Oklahoma State close. Have played a lot of teams really, really tough this year, including LSU, I think Utah as well. And so this is a team that's very dangerous, and they get the opportunity to host Arkansas. And Arkansas is a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde team, just a really difficult team to trust. Right now, they struggled midway through the year. As we mentioned, lost to Central Arkansas, got run ruled by Wichita State in a midweek game. Came back and won a series against Alabama. Won another series against Florida, swept Mississippi State, but then this last weekend was nearly swept, just barely avoided a sweep at the hands of Georgia, which I think right now is probably the best team in the SEC. Them and Tennessee are kind of hand in hand, but yeah, another good opportunity for Central Arkansas here to see what they can do and see if they can have another upset here on the national scene. And then, lastly of the big games, today going on, Louisiana at Baylor. Baylor had about as good of a weekend as you could possibly have. As we mentioned, they went to Knoxville and took a couple from Tennessee. So they've been a little bit up and down since that win against Oklahoma. They've played well at times, and then they've really kind of struggled. But then out of nowhere, they've got these 2 wins against Tennessee. So they're a team certainly to be reckoned with in the Big 12. Right there, obviously behind Oklahoma State, and Texas. But we'll see this game. Louisiana is a team that's very, very interesting to me. They've played a ridiculously tough schedule, and they are, I believe, 30-10 right now. So they've got a really big opportunity. They're among the top 15 in RPI, strength of schedule, and things like that. Some publications have them, and this is just the ESPN, USA Today rankings that I've used here on the screen that you have. But I think Louisiana has an opportunity to be a top 16 seed. But I think a lot will go on that depending on this week and then this weekend. They play as you have here. They go to Baylor tonight. They go to Texas A&M tomorrow night, and then they have a three game set in the Sun Belt Conference against Texas State, which is one of the better teams in the Sun Belt. So I think if they sweep those 5 games, then they absolutely, I think, are very much in the driver's seat to be able to potentially host a regional. But if they can get one of these two against Baylor and Louisiana, and then maybe sweep or win 2 out of 3, then they're still putting themselves in a really good opportunity potentially to get that nod, because I think that the schedule lightens up a little bit remaining the rest of the way. So all right, so let's conclude here. There's no more comments. I think everybody's watching games or traveling or whatever might be happening. But and just in terms of any other scores you got, I mean, South Carolina's still up 2-0 over Clemson, 7-0 Tennessee over Virginia Tech. Indiana has a 3-1 lead early on over Louisville. Indiana was a team that just had a 22-game win streak snapped over the weekend against Minnesota. I believe it's in Minnesota actually won two of those 3 games over the weekend. Liberty and Virginia playing as well. Both pretty good teams there. Tied scoreless through a couple of innings. So really talking about this game, and so I think this is a good situation for Oklahoma. I think the thing that I come back to anytime this team has been challenged this year with a ranked opponent, they have met the challenge and they have exceeded a lot of expectations in those games. Oklahoma obviously is still yet to lose to a top 25 team. They've been very, very dominant in some aspects. You've got the dominant performance over UCLA, 15-0. The dominant performance over Kentucky, I believe that was an 18-0 score. They were really dominant, and certainly in game 1 against Auburn. I don't remember that score, but it was a 5-inning run rule. I want to say it was like 11-12-0 in that situation. Then came back and beat Maddie Penta, pretty well in the next game against Auburn. The 3-game sweep over Texas. And so anytime this team has felt a little bit of a challenge, anytime this team has faced a ranked opponent, I've not done the stats, but I would be willing to bet they've dominated ranked opponents more than they've dominated teams outside of that top 25. So with that being said, I think this is a comfortable win for Oklahoma. When you look at LSU, they're probably a little bit better in the circle than Texas, but I think Texas hits a decent amount better. Oklahoma was able to limit them, even though Texas got on the board first in every game. Oklahoma was able to limit them to 5 runs in 3 games. So I like the matchup for Oklahoma. I think obviously Oklahoma struggled to a certain degree when when this committee approach has faced itself, has reared its head against Oklahoma. But I think at the same time, I think when you go into enemy territory, I think the level of focus will be there. I think they will be locked in from the jump. And I think this will be, I don't know if it'll be a run rule win, but I think we'll see a comfortable win from from Oklahoma. And just as comparison, I think we might even see this game tonight be a little bit more comfortable than maybe a game or two that they have over the weekend in that Miami, Ohio tournament against, I believe they play Louisville, Miami, Ohio, and Oakland in 3 games. There might be a fourth one in there. I can't remember, but I know those three. So would not be surprised. Like I said, Oklahoma tends to this rises to the challenge. They're a team that needs to be challenged, and they really thrive. They really thrive on that challenge to a certain degree. So, thanks everybody for joining. Love the discussion here. Make sure that you guys we'll start planning these a little bit more ahead of time, but we'll keep doing these week after week. Thanks for joining. We'll continue to talk Oklahoma softball, national softball, and just enjoy the Oklahoma game tonight. Enjoy the rest of the games as you watch. And Boomer Sooner, and God bless.